So if you spend any time creating content on LinkedIn and you're wondering why it is not driving any sort of business for you, you don't have anybody reaching out asking how can they learn more, I'm going to take you through exactly why that is happening. And it's what you're putting in your content, and it's what you're saying, and it's also what you're not saying. So let's break in today, because I'm also going to share how we helped our client generate over $9,000 from LinkedIn within 40 days, cash collected within installing this type of messaging. So it's happened to me in the past before, where I've had somebody come in and they said, hey, like, I've seen your engagement on your posts, like, you're supposed to be teaching me about how creating content, but I don't see that you have a ton of engagement. Like, how does that meant to work? And this is something that I use as a methodology for all of my channels, be it YouTube, be it LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, it doesn't really matter. I don't care about vanity metrics, about things like views and likes. What I am looking for is how that drives people back over in the DMs. Because what happens is when I do my outreach, when I run ads, I will force the hand, and then they will come back and they will do research. They will watch my YouTube videos, they will read my posts on LinkedIn, and they will go through my content on Instagram. And creating content that gets conversions is very different than creating content that gets lots and lots of eyeballs that the algorithms like. So the algorithm specifically on LinkedIn has actually gone through a massive change, and it's called the LinkedIn Brew 360, and I've covered that in a different video. But for today, what you have to understand is that when you're creating content that algorithmically, that's a word, does well on LinkedIn is very different than the content that you need to create that somebody says, I really need to seek out Kara's help, I really need her. Because what I typically see a lot of people doing is they're building content that just attracts the wrong audience. It typically will just attract a whole lot of people who will like it, they'll comment on it, and then sometimes they'll even try and take it and say, I'm going to run with this, I'm going to try that. And that is because a lot of the world has been conditioned to create content that is based off of value, that's based off of education, that's based off of the how and the what, instead of content that focuses on the who and the why. Because if you focus your content around the who and the why, the conversations internally that your audience has is very, very different. Because if all you're doing is creating content around all the things that they need to do, all of the what, all of the how, what tends to happen is that the audience either they just read it because it makes them feel good about it, or they're actually trying to solve their problems, or they'll actually go and try and do the very thing that you listed out for them on exactly the education of what it takes to get them there. And so the problem with that is that you've scratched the itch of your audience of the problem that you've named. Maybe you've done a good job of naming what their core key issues are, but you've scratched it too much. You've sent them off. They're going to go and they're going to try and do the thing. And usually what typically happens is they don't really execute on what you were suggesting properly. They don't get the results that they need to go to. And typically the people who are the DIYers, the ones that want to just go and just consume a lot of information for free and do it, are typically not the people who can afford our products and our services. So I do not create content based off of value. I do not want you to be able to go and consume a piece of content of mine and think, I'm going to follow steps 1 to 5 and I'm going to do the very thing. Because I know that that doesn't help the people who actually have the money inside of my audience. I want to work with the big people in my audience who have budget. And typically those people, they just want things done from you. They want to understand what it is that you can achieve and why it's so important. That's the type of content that creates action from your audience. So I do not create content for the algorithm. I create content for the eyeballs that I am getting, because it's actually a lot less work for me to put a little bit of money into ads and put a little bit of money into the outbound so that I can force the eyeball, but the eyeball always will come and check me out before they respond, before they go through and they click through, before they buy anything, before they book a call, before they do anything. They go into a research mode and they go start looking. And if I can better present the ideas around the insight, around the cost of inaction, around the objections that they typically have when they want to work with a provider like myself, that provides a much better case for them actually becoming a lead of mine. So when I worked with somebody like my client who did the $9,000 within 40 days, it didn't really matter with what was happening if in the outbound, if the messaging that they were putting out in their content wasn't going to be fixed. So that's a big piece of when we are working with people. Does not matter which industry, does not matter what we are doing in terms of the LinkedIn strategy. Everybody has to go through a messaging audit so that we can ensure that, of course, this is going to the right people, but when those people come over, that we have the correct messaging that's built within their content so that when they do come over, they have the right feelings and insight that they need to see to be able to have that person, that client that we're working with, be positioned properly to be seen as the person who can solve for their problems, not just the guy who's had a list of the top 5 reasons why you need to be doing X, Y, and Z and taking somebody through a complete workshop essentially within their content. So it's really looking at the before where it's just like a prescription, there's these, here are the 4 ways to improve your LinkedIn outreach versus the diagnosis of what's happening. Your outreach isn't failing because you had bad copy, it's failing because something happens before your prospect reads a single word. That's pretty meta considering the subject of today's video. But you get the point, is that there, again, if there's one thing that you can take away from this video, it is never create content about the how and the what. You want to create content about the who and the why. So when a client comes to us, we want to see results come in as quickly as possible. And this is just what happened with Tammy, is that not only did we set up an entire backend system of automation and the list building and an entire campaign built for her on LinkedIn, but we also took a hold dearly in the messaging that she puts out, what needed to be said within her profile and what needs to be said within the content that she is putting out. So that when these messages are going out to the very specific people that we set up these campaigns for, they come back and they're able to consume the right messaging, the right content, and the right positioning to be able to say yes to a provider like Tammy for the offer that she currently has. So if that is you and you want some help with that, you can check out the link in the description below. You'll see that we have an offer called the Launch by Lunch. It's just a one-time $2,000 where I come in, I work with you, and I will get you launched before lunch. And I will do this very same thing for your business. I will set up all the automations. I will do all of the list building. I will create all the messages that need to be said to these ideal clients that you're trying to reach and help you identify exactly what needs to be done inside of your messaging, inside of your content, inside of the profile, so that you can just go and work on just the positive replies that come back into the unified inbox that I will build for you. So if that's you, be sure to click on the link below and check that out. If you have any questions about that offer, feel free to send us an email to support@salesbites.co and just have the title, "Hey Kara, I watched the video. I'm looking for more information on your Launch by Lunch." All right, that's it. If you're this far with me in the video, thank you so much. But don't forget to like the video and hit subscribe, because I put out new videos every single week, how we use platforms like Meta and LinkedIn to book B2B sales calls from totally cold audiences to deals that get closed. Cheers.